Another game week, another very last minute waiver preview, so let's get straight into it. Welcome back to the Draft FC podcast, the podcast website and YouTube channel dedicated to all things official draft FPL. My name is Mitch and I'm your host for another game week preview, going over waiver options, hidden gems and general Premier League chat ahead of game week 26. So we just come off the back of a bit of a drawn-out double game week following the Villa-Liverpool game last night, which was quite a good game. Villa probably unfortunate in the end not to come away with 3 points. It was a funny game week for me. I was going into it with a bit of trepidation because I had 0 double game week players in the squad, but somehow, thanks to Verbruggen and Maddison, and of course Dango Ouattara, come away with a very respectable 52 points this game week and a win in my other head-to-head league. So, yeah, can't complain there. And we've got a busy week coming up. We've got 2 game weeks now in quick succession. We've got this one at the weekend, and then game week 27 is a midweek game week spread across Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday next week. So, means that following the conclusion of game week 26 on Sunday, which will be the big one between City and Liverpool, there'll then be less than 24 hours to go before another waiver deadline for that game week 27. Who'll be an FPL content creator, eh? I've had a very busy week, hence the late episode again, and I've got a busy weekend planned, so we're going to be up against the clock to get something out for that one on Sunday night. But this is what we do. This is what we're here for. As always, if you enjoy the content or if this is the first time you find yourself here, give us a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, and if you're listening to the audio, make sure you're following on whichever app you use so you don't miss out on the future episodes as they drop. Now, I'm recording this episode on Thursday, the 20th of February around lunchtime, so any team news, injury developments or press conference info are up to date as of then, and of course, subject to change. Some of the players I'll be discussing in this episode include Brennan Johnson, Kevin Schade, Nwaneri, plus a few more. So let's get straight into it. So a reminder, the waiver deadline will be very close in all likelihood to the time that you're listening to this, if not already gone. 6:30 in the evening UK time on Thursday, the 20th of February, with the main game week deadline 24 hours later at 6:30 tomorrow, because we have Friday night football between Leicester and Brentford, which... yeah, bit of an odd one to put on a nice showcase standalone TV slot, but there you go. If you're a draft player, you enjoy all games equally. So, yeah, we'll look forward to that one. Into Waiver Watch, and there were some big pickups last week. The main players coming in, we had Rashford, Evan Ferguson, Disasi, Beto, Nwaneri, Nkunku, Onuachu, Garcia and Jorgensen. The players making way were Martinez, Joel Linton, Havertz, Martinelli, Hudson-Odoi, Sancho, Calvert-Lewin, Decore and Davis. So lots of injured and suspended players there, so all very fair enough to make way. In terms of key injuries and suspensions, we got a firm update on Kai Havertz that his season is over, so he is unfortunately a drop if you're still hanging on to him. Other Chelsea players who had Jackson and Madueke, both with hamstring injuries, both expected to return around game week 30. But still waiting on firmer news on that. But I think for now, that's about going to be when we see them back. And Jai's injured his knee. Sounds like it could be an MCL injury. Again, haven't heard that firmly anywhere, but just judging by the type of injury it was and the time frame, again, expecting him to be back around game week 32. Kanji has injured his abductor, so around his hip. I believe he's had surgery on it, so he's expected to be back very late on around game week 34, so he's a definite drop if you've got him. And then the other one was Amad Diallo for Man United with an ankle ligament injury, and sounds like unfortunately his season's over too. Because it's a Man United player, suddenly the forums and everything swarmed with who to pick up instead. Really doesn't matter. You don't need to be going chasing after the Amad replacement, it sounds like, or it looks like they're going to have to deploy a combination of Højlund and Xerxes up there, which, you know, at least it opens up another forward option, but it's not really exciting for draft. In terms of the main picks, in terms of defenders, I'd say overall, the defenders and the clean sheet propositions out there this week do not really appeal to me. The Everton defence might be an underrated one. They're facing a very struggling and, as I just said, injury-stricken Man United. but it's not really a strong recommendation filling me with any confidence. But the likes of O'Brien might be there if you just need a last-minute pick-up for someone that's more than likely just going to sit on your bench. The other team I would begrudgingly consider and begrudgingly I'm going to tout later on in the episode are Spurs, who are amazingly now looking to get their third clean sheet on the bounce away at Ipswich at the weekend, which isn't the worst fixture on paper, but their main options are all down in hidden gem territory still, so we'll come on to those in a few minutes' time. Midfielders, as always, there are plenty of options at various price points in the roster percentages. I've had to take Dango off the list this week because his ownership is now pushing 80%. So, for all of you listening, you've either got him or someone else in the league has picked him up. But another one with reasonably high ownership is Brennan Johnson. He's back for Spurs now, and he's one of those players, whatever you think of him in terms of his quality, continues to just churn out attacking returns and by extension churns out FPL points. 7 goals and 4 assists for the season. He has played the equivalent of about 17 full 90 minutes in the Premier League this year, which means he's getting an actual attacking output at around 0.66 per 90, which means every 3 games he plays, he'll get 2 returns, which is very good. I know he was dropped in my own main league a few weeks ago because I was the one that dropped him, so he may well be knocking around some of your leagues too. Kevin Schade is another one of the Draft FC meme team, quietly plugging away, and now has hit the same number of returns that Brennan Johnson has. 7 goals and 4 assists. So he's done it in 300 fewer minutes than Brennan Johnson, giving him an output of around 0.8 returns per 90. That means if he plays 5 full matches, we'd expect him to get 4 returns, which is top tier output. It just obviously hasn't been getting the consistent minutes this year, depending on the formation that Brentford have played. Brentford go to Leicester, then they've got a home game against Everton in midweek, so not a bad little pairing. The reverse fixture, the Brentford beating Leicester 4-1 at home back in Game Week 13. Guess who put up 23 FPL points that week from a hat-trick and an assist? Yes, it was Sir Kevin Schade. So you could do far worse than picking him up this week, even if you're just looking at him for this weekend or maybe a week or two. 3 goals from his last 4 Premier League starts as well means that even in the short term, he's in good form. So very low risk and potentially very high reward. Nuneri is one we mentioned last week. I kind of discussed him in a pairing with Raheem Sterling and said that the maths and all logic was all pointing towards Nuneri being the main one, and he managed a 9-pointer thanks to an assist and all 3 bonus points. I think his continuing place in the starting 11 is fairly assured now. He's been one of their best performers, and even if you had some of those injured players in the mix currently, I think he'd still be well up for a starting spot. He's been that good. Anyone that did grab Sterling for a bit of a punt, throw him back in the bin, because I think Arsenal will look to rework the players that they've got, which will see Sterling back on the bench. And then the final midfielder to discuss in the main segment here is Marcus Tavernier. We still haven't seen his first Premier League start since returning from injury. He did start the FA Cup game, but we've seen him get around an hour off the bench in the 3 Premier League games he's been back, and he's got 3 attacking returns in that time. So every week now I've been sort of saying I'm expecting him to get the starting spot over Brooks, so we'll have to see if this week is the week for him, because I know Tavernier is popular amongst draft heads. For the forwards, a couple of fairly uninspiring options, but such is the starvation for forwards, especially then when we have a few that seem to be made of dried spaghetti, means we're discussing the likes of Paul Onuachu for Southampton. Maybe a little bit unfair on him because he's now showed a bit of form over the last 3 weeks. He's got 3 returns in the last 4 game weeks, 2 goals and an assist. Brighton at home in the upcoming week is almost certainly going to be a loss for Southampton, but they'll certainly got opportunities to score, and I'm 99% sure that Onuachu will start. So if you're someone that's holding an injured striker or a striker that's just completely out of favour, a Danny Ings or something like that, then definitely worth a pick up. Another player who's maybe not quite in that bracket, but certainly in the conversation if you're just needing someone, is Callum Wilson. Now, Eddie Howe is very much up to his old tricks by absolutely rinsing as close to the same starting 11 as he can every single week. The Gordon Murphy-Isak trio looks fairly concrete at the moment, and this This really is just a needs must pick up. As I said, if you've got Havertz, for example, and there was really nobody else, he's someone that could do a job for you. I'd expect Wilson to get increasing minutes to give Isak a bit of a break over the next few weeks, especially given that they're still in the two domestic cup competitions, and with that EFL Cup final in just a few weeks' time. Simply put, if Isak gets injured or doesn't play in that game, they've got no chance of lifting that trophy. So they need to protect him, and it means they're going to have to share some of the minutes around for the next month or so. But do comment below any other players that I haven't mentioned that you're interested in this week, particularly players that you feel might be in that kind of hidden gem bracket who are going slightly under the radar. And happy to have a bit of a chat in the comments below. But let's talk about some hidden gems. These are all players with generally less than 10% ownership in 10-team leagues. And we always love being able to mention a goalkeeper. And I'm fairly sure I didn't. I can't remember now, but I should have done. But what I should have done is cover Palmer for Ipswich in the January transfer section. Former West Bromwich Albion goalkeeper has gone straight into the starting 11. And despite not getting all 3 points, was given a much praised performance in their draw against Aston Villa. He made some top saves and looks an absolute lock to be the Ipswich number one, probably for the remainder of the season. So if you've got Walton or Muric, clear them out for Palmer, and for anyone else looking to change up one of their goalkeepers, Palmer is very much an option. 6 saves in the first game. It bodes well because that is where he's going to collect probably the majority of his points. But if we're going to look to get some clean sheets out of him, Ipswich are going to have to try and figure out a way to limit the number of shots that he does face. But it's a tricky balance to get, especially when we're looking at it from a draft perspective and picking up a kind of lower rate goalkeeper like Palmer. We want him to get the shots at him because we want him to get those save points, but it is nice to get a bonus clean sheet now and again. But we'll see. I think we can certainly expect him to have to make some saves against Spurs at the weekend with some of their players coming back from injury. Now, always hate the bad energy I might be putting out when touting Spurs players, but as I said at the top, the defensive options overall look fairly limited to me out in the waiver piles this week. I expect lots of 3-5-2 formations, providing you're fortunate enough to have 2 forwards that can play. The 2 main Spurs options that you'll be able to find are Jed Spence and Ben Davies. Spence has put up back-to-back FPL 9-pointers with clean sheets and all 3 bonus in the last 2 game weeks, largely due to the fact that he takes on well and he gets crosses in the box, so he does rack up those bonus points. There are still 13 Premier League games to play, and if Spence continues in this vein, I don't think we'll see Udogie back in the lineup. And he may well eclipse Kulusevski as the Spurs player of the season the way he's going at the moment. He's been absolutely standout good. I think he's maybe won, including some of the cup competitions, I'd have to double check, but I think he might have won 3 Man of the Match awards over the last month from the sort of official award that's given out. So really, really solid player. Definitely due an attacking return as well, because they haven't really flowed in the way his performances have. So yeah, if you could pick up someone this week, Spence is definitely a shout. Davies is just another one if you're just looking for a playing Spurs defender, but obviously don't expect any extras beyond maybe a yellow card. Into midfield, and it's been probably a good few months since we've been able to talk about Minter for Brighton. He's just sneaking into hidden gem territory. Ownership is 9.9% in 10-team leagues. 4 returns in the last 4, and very much back looking like a regular starter. Southampton is a fixture we have been and will be targeting all season long, and with Brighton following that up with a couple of home games, good home games after, he's someone you could be eyeing up for not just this week, but for a few game weeks ahead too. Next on the list, I've got a couple of Manchester City meds in Ilkay Gundogan and Nico Gonzalez. Gundogan ownership 8% and Gonzalez is only peaking at 4% so far, the new addition to that midfield. Now, it may seem like an odd time to tout a couple of City midfielders, but I've got a sneaky feeling that they could go on a bit of a run now. And I'm obviously saying that right off the back of a fairly crushing 2-legged defeat to Real Madrid in the Champions League last night. But yeah, I think they really could give Arsenal and Liverpool a bit of a run for their money in the title race this season. That setup they deployed for the Newcastle game, I think is going to be difficult for them to want to deviate from, I would imagine. It was as good as Gundogan has looked since he's been back at City this year, and we also saw the real formal introduction of what Omar Marmoush can do. His ownership has rocketed right up to above 80%, so if you missed him, you've probably missed out. But the issue really is City now have their two most difficult fixtures, not just of the calendar, but of their remaining games full stop. In the next 7 days, they play Liverpool and Spurs, which, two games historically they do struggle in. But if City were to win both of those, that would really set them up for what could be a real momentous run. Because, after those two games, I say that it's a fairly unimpeded run right through to game week 38. And as I said, could really put the sweat on Liverpool and Arsenal above them. But we'll see. And as I said, Gundogan and Gonzalez, I feel like in a real working, ticking over City team that's able to do what they did against Newcastle, which is not just win, but just absolutely blow them away in the first half, then don't be surprised if they start chipping in with attacking returns. Next is Merino for Arsenal, their brand new, shiny number 9. All that talk that they needed to go out and drop 100 million on a new striker in January, and the man was just sat there all along. And in a team of set piece and heading giants, he is really right up there for them. His first goal for Arsenal was against Liverpool with a good header, and as Draft FC Taz pointed out to me at the weekend, that famous headed winner for Spain against Germany in the Euros last year. In the top 100 10-team draft leagues last week, he was only wavered in just 4 of them, just 4% of them. So kudos to anybody who did grab him and play him last week. There were a couple of rumblings, probably from some very engaged Arsenal fans last week, that could be an option. Now, of course, we didn't see it from the start. He came on as a second-half substitute and was able to get his 2 goals in no time at all to turn that game around. All of the sort of post-match comments from Arteta and from Merino were suggesting that wasn't going to be a viable long-term tactic, and long-term, I'd say that's probably fair enough. But in the short to medium term, with some of the players they're missing, and given just how lackluster Raheem Sterling has looked, I don't know why they wouldn't start Merino up top. And even if it just means they then lean into their kind of corners and set piece ability, having Merino in there with Rice, Gabriel, Saliba seems like a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you do it? I think if you see him in the starting lineup at the weekend, he will almost certainly be lining up as a 9 or as a false 9. But whether it's a 9 or a false 9, it doesn't really matter. He's going to be the one getting in the box to try and get on the end of crosses. So 3% ownership in 10-team leagues means he's going to be there for the vast majority of you listening. And I think for a short-term punt, even just looking at this week, home against West Ham is a very nice fixture on paper. What is there really to lose? And if he does start up front and scores again, it's going to be very difficult for Arsenal to not continue to deploy him in that role. And you've then got a very tasty out-of-position player to with very little invested in him. So, yeah, definitely a player I'm eyeing up, and I've already got him penciled in as one of my waiver transactions this week. The final midfielder is Carlos Alcaraz. Now, I clearly stated in my January transfer section the other day that I wasn't interested in picking him up at all, and there's always someone that shows me up. So a goal, an assist, and all 3 bonus points. Got him a 13-pointer. Excellent news for the handful of owners that did pick him up last week, though as you can see for 10-team leagues, that is close to 0%. So I think it was literally like 1 or 2 leagues out of the few thousand that there are who actually had Alcaraz picked up. So yeah, if you are listening and you did pick him up and you got those 13 points, comment below and I'll give you a firm pat on the back there. We knew he'd start last weekend because Decore was suspended, and I think we should probably continue to see him play even now Decore's back. Everton won the game 2-1, but the XG probably suggested the scoreline should have gone the other way. So I'm not expecting we're going to see these heroics from Alcaraz every week, but with United at home and then followed by Brentford, Wolves and West Ham, these Everton players are still worth the punt, which is why I was kind of looking at their defenders at the beginning too. They've got a very strange fixture schedule now, Everton, because after those 4, they've then got one of the worst imaginable runs from Game Week 13. And then from Game Week 35, they pop up again on the radar because they've got Ipswich, Fulham and Southampton. So we'll all be flocking back to them again. But that's for another pod, another day. And finally, just the one hidden gem forward to mention, and that's Osula for Newcastle. Very similar vein to Wilson, really. If you're in a larger league with a non-playing or injured forward, then Osula will, at a minimum, I think, be coming on for 10 minutes at the end of games at the moment. He's the sort of player, if Newcastle were winning 2 or 3-0, they could bring off Isak and Murphy and bring on Wilson, and then Osula could maybe play off the right-hand side. So, yeah, I think as part of their rotation, he will see some minutes. So he's just an option if you really, really need one. Most hidden gem pick this week was fairly uninspiring. I could have put Carlos Alcaraz in this zone. His ownership is very low in 16-team leagues still. But if you want to, if you're in one of those really big leagues and having to scrape through the barrel, I don't mind picking up Bobby Decordova-Reid this week for Leicester. 9% rostered in 16-team leagues. 3 Premier League starts in a row. A goal and 4 assists in the league so far off fairly patchy minutes. And as I say, a home game against Brentford, as much as we're liking it from a Brentford perspective, Leicester, I'm sure, will be highlighting this game as one to try and get 3 points in what looks like a very uphill struggle for survival this year. Predicted lineups have been updated and tweaked last night and this morning. I'll do another sweep of those this afternoon. One name I just want to highlight as part of a kind of a get rid list. I've seen quite a few questions, unless it's just the same guy posting in several different spots the same question, about people sort of asking for permission from the community, trying to canvass opinion on whether or not they can drop Calafiori, the Arsenal defender. Just go and have a look at Calafiori's minutes, sort of starts and what he's done. I know he popped up with a goal the other week, but he is very much not first choice and 100% droppable. He's not someone I'd be interested in at all. Even if I saw him in the waiver pile, he's not someone I'd be punting on anyway. So if that is you, or if you need to hear it and you've got Calafiori, free that spot up. As I said, I know the defender options aren't brilliant this week, but even if you were able to find one of the City defenders in for a bit of a punt, looking slightly further ahead, yeah, free that spot up and use it to be a bit more creative. So that is it for this episode. Another reminder, the game week deadline is tomorrow, Friday, 21st of February at 6:30, with the waiver deadline this evening. So very close, no doubt, to the time that you are listening to this. If you do find the content helpful or have just been looking for a bit somewhere that does draft FPL content, then as I said, do click the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up. Comment any queries below. I'll be very active on the comments this afternoon. So what I would probably say is between the time of upload and the waiver deadline, I will endeavour to respond to any and all comments. If you want a little bit more reliable, unfettered support and access to all things Draft FC as well as our community, then by signing up at draftfc.co.uk, you'll also be able to join our Discord server, which is exclusive only to signed up members of Draft FC. You'll be able to do that instantly once you're in. There's a button to join in there. It's an excellent source of help and advice for myself as well. So I'm always checking out in there. But really, it's about the support the other draft heads can provide in there, because the cumulative knowledge within that forum, if you were able to distill it into one brain, would smash their draft league every season, no doubt. So yeah, check that out if that's of interest to you as well. Otherwise, in the interest of time, I'll leave things there. Best of luck for your matchups and teams this week. Hope you get who you want off the waivers. And as always, until next time, stay shook.